Hey, yo, it's me. It's the RAV. I am back with the HeelCast, and I'm not the only one coming back that's been off for a while. I just want to apologize in advance. The HeelCast, we've kind of had some scheduling issues. We didn't have a show 2 weeks ago. I want to give a big thank you to Hurls and, of course, the return of Chef last week for holding it down for us. But this week we got a special show. It's kind of been my brainchild. I've been trying to get out here for a little bit, but we're kind of discussing how to make Impact Wrestling great again with a question mark because some people don't think it ever was, although I think it used to be. And I brought the entire originators with me here. Of course, my partner in crime, as always, is with me. The good God, the Global Wrestling Network Impact dude himself. What's up, man?
Not much, man. I'm thinking I should change my name to Global Wrestling Network, dude.
I don't even know what to call you anymore, and I
don't know what to call myself.
Yeah, I tried calling Brandon the GWN dude, and then when I finally get back on the show with you, I almost call you the GFW dude again. I was just, rusty.
I think you should just call me Buttnut like everybody else does. It seems fitting.
Good God, the way I could twist Buttnut around.
I know.
Yeah, nut butt.
You'd like to twist my butt nuts around too. I know how that works.
I'd like to nut in your butt too, but wow, I just said that on the air. No filter.
Sorry. It's all right. I said it too.
And, it's kind of fitting that we're talking about, going back to the history of this company and all. Jeff Jarrett, he left the company. He was the originator. We've got our originator with us, too. The man, there weren't for this guy, there wouldn't be no HeelCast, but our boy is back with us. The one, the only old school heel. What's up, bud?
Hey, what's up, turd noms?
The man who put the heel in heel cast.
That's right.
And I thought you were going somewhere with Buttnut, too, but now you went back to originators and kept it real for old school heel.
I had this whole Buttnut thing going in my head, and I didn't even get to use it.
Damn. I'm thinking about Pornog now that we're talking about nothing buts, but, it's a dirty-minded HeelCast, but, this is look, we didn't really have much of an impact this past week, so, I mean, what better time to do it? Happy Thanksgiving to everyone. A little bit late there. Hope you got your Black Friday taken care of, but we're going to hop in, kind of discuss, basically, I mean, actually, you know what, first off, it's kind of a spin-off concept from what was discussed on the first episode of Impact Radio. Impact Dude, I am fucking, having so much trouble trying to say your name. Impact Dude, how was the kickoff of this Impact Asylum Radio?
Yeah, it was pretty cool, Raven Effect. Fire Guy and I, we had a real nice conversation around one of Talon's articles, but the idea is we want to get other people involved. So we'd like to take people off the site, get you out from behind your keyboards, maybe get you to converse with some other members of the site. And, once in a while, it's not going to be a weekly, scheduled type of event, but when there's something to talk about, get some folks to talk about it. And, I think sometimes it's fun to actually talk to people as opposed to just writing a comment every now and again. So hopefully we can bring some people out of their shells and do it a little more often.
Yeah, and look, I mean, may as well tell the HeelCast Nation that may not know about this. I mean, what exactly was the topic that you discussed on the show? Like, what was this all about necessarily?
Well, it was really about the future and the direction of Impact. Right. So Talon had written a great article, 6 sides worldwide, that chronicled, his vision for what Impact should be doing moving forward. And reading it, it's very similar, not the exact same, but very similar to my vision where I think things should go. So, talked about it with Fire Guy a little bit, and he had a totally different take. So, we got up there and we both said our piece and talked about it and debated it and had a great discussion.
All right. I mean, definitely be sure to check that out. HeelCast listeners, you get the one and only Global Wrestling Network dude on there with Fire Guy, who does the show on Impact Asylum as well. One of, 3 now. So check that out if you get the chance. Our show, this is stuff that I was kind of against, but there's just been basically in between Bound for Glory from that tapings that were going so bad, Bound for Glory, there was just a lot of discussion about, what should happen in a wrestling show, what you want to see, a lot of arguments and debates. I was getting kind of pissed, and then it kind of sparked a fire into my ass. It's like, let's put this on the HeelCast. Kind of died down on that, but we're going to put it out now. So I guess, to kind of go over, basically we're kind of discussing what we want to see in a wrestling show, see Impact do, how to grow the product. I mean, it's kind of tackling a bunch of aspects. I guess for those of you Johnny come latelys to the program, kind of an extreme, a little brief rundown here of the history and the regimes and all that. So, from 2002 through 2009, you can basically call it Jeff Jarrett years. Obviously it was Jeff Jarrett and Dixie Carter kind of running the show. Jeff Jarrett ended up in a relationship with Kurt Angle's ex-wife at the time, who became his wife. That caused Dixie Carter to remove him from Power. 2010 through 2013 became the Hogan, Bischoff, and Bruce Pritchard era. I was excited as hell when it first started. By the time it ended, I just wanted it to end. Unfortunately, sometimes be careful what you wish for, because after that we got the Dixie Carter, retard Gaburik, and then towards the end of last year, Billy Corgan era in there. I'm not necessarily hating on Billy Corgan too much. It's more of John Gaburik and his failures that we had there. And then 2017 is the God knows what the hell's going on era. I mean, look, we had Anthem purchasing it. Jeff Jarrett was in, and then Jeff Jarrett is out now. So we're assuming the people that are in charge have been Sanjay Dutt, Scott D'Amore, John Gaburik, and possibly Jimmy Jacobs. I'll be honest, guys, other than this, this Thanksgiving episode that was just passed on, this new Creative Sense Bound for Glory, I've really enjoyed the shows again, and I don't think I'm alone on it, but, we're going to kind of dive in there. You guys so far, I'll start with Old School Heels. Since Bound for Glory has been over with, how have you been thinking of the shows overall?
They've been fun. That's the biggest thing for me. I've enjoyed watching them. The wrestling's been good. They seem to be going somewhere with the stories. I have not wanted to turn it off, so that is a huge positive.
What about that dude? Let's call you that dude.
I'm sitting here laughing my butt off. Old School Heel, you clearly didn't watch this past week's episode, did you?
No, I meant to say something about that. I left that one off.
Yeah, clearly, because the rest of them have
it's blocked out of our memories.
It was bad. They actually posted something on Facebook about this week is going to be a quote solid show. Way to get behind your own product and kind of take a dig at last week's episode. No, I've enjoyed them as well, Raven Effect. But I got to throw something out here. For those of you that have been listening to the HeelCast for a long time, this show that we're doing tonight is really where the HeelCast started. Back before they started on Destination America, back in that December before the premiere, Wake Chambers, reached out and said, hey, why don't we do really at the time it was a written series on what would make a great wrestling show. And then we decided to do it a podcast because it would be more fun. And then it was like, oh, well, they're going to debut on Destination America in a couple of weeks. Let's just review it. And here we are today. So it's kind of funny that here we are, finishing up our second full year as a podcast and just kind of getting around to that show. So it's going to be exciting and fun.
No doubt. The way that I look at it, guys, I mean, the fact of the matter is the ratings are really getting low for Impact right now, and it's unfortunate. I feel like the set of tapings that led into Bound for Glory not only being so long, but just also being pretty damn bad really kind of set them back a lot. And the ratings have not really climbed back up, and unfortunately, I think a lot of fans are missing a good product right now. And, when we go back, look, the peak years between 2002 and 2009, you saw a steady growth with Impact, and they were getting their best rate. I mean, consistent, pretty solid ratings. In the Hogan years, they got their highest rated show and whatnot, but, they started to decline dramatically because the product wasn't as good as it was. I think, at least in my opinion, and Petey Williams, we interviewed him. He said that was their attitude era back then. 2002 to 2009, I feel was by far the best stretch of the company. Are you guys both in agreement with me? I'm pretty sure Old School Heel is.
Yeah.
So there were bits and pieces from all of the regimes that I like. Lots of action, excitement. I think the crowd was most into it in the Jarrett years. The Hogan years brought the hope that maybe they could take over and be a real competitor. For those of us that are big WCW fans, hope that maybe they would bring back some of that WCW magic. And obviously it was a letdown, right down with the aces and eights. My worst would absolutely have to be the Gaburik time. But they had a lot of budget cuts during that time, so I don't necessarily blame him solely the way maybe you do. But I really enjoyed what Billy Corgan was doing. I thought that he was doing something that was totally different. And then 2017 is a lot closer to the 2002 to 2009 years. So I would say that I've enjoyed bits and pieces of all of it. What I haven't enjoyed is the fact that we're having this conversation because every single regime has changed everything every time. And that's just sad.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, one question here that I want to ask you guys, this kind of pops up to me. So, I mean, look, we had just going to the first two eras before John Gabira took over, and this is the stuff that I guess that really like just to the core of me is like what fucked the company. I mean, you had the Jarrett years, 2002, 2009, the growth, and then Hogan and Bischoff and all that kind of boomed a little bit to start, and then just totally started to fail, and then we get this new regime. So it kind of like, I know it was more, the end of 2013, but really official Genesis 2014. What did you guys expect necessarily when the Hogan Bischoff era ended? I mean, were you expecting I expected basically they know what the fuck they're doing. They saw where the issue was. They're going to go back to the old format of TNA prior to Hogan and Bischoff. Is that what you were expecting, Old School Heel?
Not exactly. After 3-4 years of the Hogan Bischoff regime, I had pretty low expectations. I had hope. We'll just say that I had hope that it would get back to where it was before Hogan came into TNA, but I really didn't expect a lot to happen. I guess kind of you get to a point as a fan after years of things that you just don't like, and you're holding on, hoping that it gets better, that you just crap. Complete brain fart here, guys.
Yeah, it's a story of my life.
Yeah. I looked at this thing over here on my wall, and next thing you know, I forgot what I was talking about. And I started thinking about something from work earlier today.
AOSH, the question is she hot?
Man. Yeah, I wish that was on the wall.
He's looking at his wife. He's going to say yes. How's that?
Yeah, I keep her on the wall in here in the TV room.
All right, if he can say whatever he wants, he's single as it gets.
Yeah.
Gotta keep it somewhere.
Oh. Yeah, pretty much I had expectations that it might get better, but I was already kind of beaten down as a fan. And really, if it wasn't for the site, I probably would have stopped watching completely at that point, even though it was nowhere near as bad as it was about to get.
I don't know. Impact, dude, what were you expecting when that regime took over in 2014? I mean, were you expecting kind of go back to the old ways, or
a train wreck? No, because if you looked at the style that they were booking at the time, and you look for the fact that Gabura came from WWE, there was going to be nothing like the Jarrett years. They weren't going back to that style. So the question was, what were they going to do? And they tried to continue a lot of the same things, but then they tried to do it on 20% of the budget, maybe less.
Yeah.
So where Hogan and Bischoff and Pritchard and those guys, they actually had some form of talent to do their stuff. I mean, let's face it, when Hogan came in, he immediately brings in, Ric Flair, he brings in Jeff Hardy, right? He brings in Rob Van Dam. Mr. Anderson joins the company. You had a ton of talent at that point. Gaburick had nothing to work with, so the product was bound to suck, and I kind of felt like it probably would suck. The biggest problem with that was that they did a poll, and it was like to bring back a six-sided ring, but it was done in a way they were bringing back a six-sided ring. And there was literally like no fanfare about it or whatnot. It's like, it's coming back, and this is it. They didn't build it up, they didn't do anything with it, and it was like they have no idea what they're doing.
I think the thing that was telling to me about that whole thing where they did the little poll on the six-sided ring and whatnot and brought it back is I feel like the people that were taking over charge at TNA, it was still TNA at the time, of course, had no fucking idea exactly like what the identity was and what made them different. They just literally thought the identity was only the six-sided ring, and that wasn't the case. I mean, and clearly, we saw how that went, and it's kind of been a bit of a downfall continually year after year. I mean, 3 different networks and all. It's just been disappointing, and that's why I was happy to have Jeff Jarrett back. And I know you just talked about all the talent and all. And I'll say this: I'd say from about 2006 through 2012, maybe overall, I would say, other than when the WWF first fucking cleared out the territories, and then the WCW spent Ted Turner's money, I don't think there may have been a more talented wrestling roster in the history of this business, and that's the shitty thing. And anyone that wants to dispute that, go look at what some of these guys have done in ROH, WWE, New Japan, keeping it in Impact too. I mean, it's unreal the talent that has been in this company at some point.
WCW?
Back in the NWO era and all that?
Yeah, man, they had major talent. Pretty much everybody's in the Hall of Fame now, man.
Yeah. I mean, you look at that, what they took from ECW. I mean, Paul Heyman did most of the work for, Bischoff to find all these great talents, but, it's It is what it is. And that's the thing that scares me the most right now about losing Jeff Jarrett is we saw all this influx of talent come back, and now he's gone. You know, Jarrett constructed that roster to start, and now, I mean, I trust you more and Sanjay Dutt a whole lot more than I trust John Burek, but, I mean, we're bleeding a whole lot of talent out. But, you know, I'm going to kind of kick into high gear here in a sec. I don't know if there's anything either you feel like adding to this before we go on.
I'm not convinced they have a super high talent level right now, to be honest with you. I mean, I love what they're doing with the knockouts. I'm not really sold on a lot of what they have going on in the main event scene. I mean, I don't get me wrong. I like Johnny Impact. I like Alberto El Patron, but they've lost a lot of talent too. So to me, it still feels a bit diluted. The only thing that I'll say about Jeff Jarrett is that Jeff Jarrett brings a lot of energy, and that energy allows people to, you know, kind of grow around him. And so that he is a huge loss. I mean, there's no doubt about it.
I mean, Jarrett brought a lot of stability back to TNA as well, outside of the name fiasco.
Well, that wasn't his fault. I mean, that was actually brilliant play on his part. I mean, like, that was. I wish I could sell like that.
Dude, never mind. I do that with beds. That's for sure. I'll tell you that. Slaying some beds out. So.
You rename them?
Yeah, I almost struck the company that I worked for, but, you know, I kind of backed out of it. I almost fucked myself over there. Yeah, you know. RAB sells some beds for a living, motherfuckers. That's what's up. But
I mean, we talked about that on that one episode of the HeelCast that I did.
I mean, we always kind of talk about selling beds when Hurls is on the show, but it is like a different kind of a thing. But if anyone can sell a bed, it'd be Hurls. Should hire him.
Not if he's been in that bed.
No. I mean, to be fair, yeah, Hurls is still dirtier than all of us, but I mean, most of us on the show got some dirty ass minds. Let's go heal about the clean one of us. But I don't know. Anyone else have anything you felt like chiming in there real quick? So I'm gonna go ahead and take that as a no. Look, here's my thing. My frustration since this Skibberg era took over, but I really want to I want to start at 2015 because I feel since 2015, Impact has had the 4 guys on the roster that I felt like they could take and grow with and really fucking make this jump back. And that would be the Pope. Everyone knows I feel the Pope could have been a huge household name. I saw one match of this guy back in his Ring of Honor days, and I said, if Impact can ever get this guy, it's gold for him. They had Davey Richards, and Davey Richards may not be the best talker, but if you look at what he did when he was Ring of Honor World Champion, that gimmick, that attitude, it was spectacular. This is a guy that could just have a great match with anyone, a techno wrestler. Like, honest to God, I've always felt like Davey Richards reminded me of Chris Benoit. Instead of taking lives, he just saves them is the only difference. Yeah, I went there. And then there's 2 guys right now.
That's a pretty big difference, Raven Effect.
I had to come with that. But look, and there's 2 guys right now on this roster, in EC3 and Eli Drake, that I think are just fucking, as far as that character, all of that. I mean, these are 2 guys that can just really take the company's future, all that, it lies on these 2 people's shoulders. I can see them as like TNA's version of Austin and The Rock. And I look back to 2016, and you go back to there, I mean, we had 6 guys that you could have literally built this company around, and I think actually really, really grown when you add the fact that we had Austin Aries and Bobby Roode back then. And then when you even look at the women, and with the women, so I think right now, for the first time in years, with Rosemary and Allie, you have these 2 stars. Unfortunately, though, I mean, you know, the company has totally fucked up. They've failed to market. Their marketing has always been terrible. And on top of that, I mean, the Pope is gone. They didn't do shit with him. Davey Richards is gone. Maybe he'll come back next year. And EC3, I mean, not only is everyone wondering if he's going to be gone and out the door next, but I mean, all the credibility and steam and momentum that they had with EC3, it was such an incredible character. Not only did they ruin the persona, but him is just it's not a big deal when he loses. He's nothing.
And that's what I was going to ask you when you said about building the company around him and Eli Drake. I mean, that all sounds great on paper 2 years ago for EC3, but how do you build the guy back up? Because right now, he's just not exciting to watch. He's not.
You know, I'll tell you this. This fantasy booking thing that we're doing all in Impact Asylum right now, I've got my ideas, what you'll see kind of brought to life here over the next few weeks. And I guess I'm not going to say it on the show, but I've got some suggestions, that's for sure. Maybe it wouldn't work, but I mean, they've got to do something with the guy. And I mean, everyone's saying, well, he's probably out the door. Well, if you start pushing the guy right and paying him right, I mean, who's to say he's going to leave?
And old school heel, correct me if I'm wrong, but is anybody really featuring EC3 in any of this booking challenge?
No, they're not, are they?
So again, that just goes to show you that they have really screwed that one up. They had a lot of work to do to fix it, and then maybe they can pay attention to what Raven Effect's getting ready to do.
I feel like it's a must. I think regardless, without a doubt, I mean, it's this company has got to fall on Eli Drake's shoulders for a reason. I feel that guy's the best in the business at what he does as far as getting a promo, his charisma, all that. And that's something that they have that no one else has with him, but they just can't fuck this up. And EC3 was like the one guy in the history of this company that they finally built right, that they did everything right with for so long. And then all of a sudden it was just a free fall of doing everything, just failure. And you look at where the guy is now, it's the biggest, my mind is just blown seeing him sometimes. But doesn't that go back to the era change? Because he was huge under Geberk. Geberk built him. Billy Corgan forgot about him, and Anthem's just like, whatever.
Didn't his downfall start under Geberk as well, though?
I felt like it was under Corgan.
No, yeah, Corgan.
I felt like towards basically, when he lost that first match to Bennett, and they sold it as a big thing, right? And then I know there was a tag team match where Lashley actually pinned him, and it was kind of like somewhat of a big deal. And then I know there was a tag team match where Galloway pinned him. It was just kind of like, meh. And then, it was like Lashley beat him. Eddie Edwards and him kind of drawed. And then he's just it's not a big deal when he loses. It's just like, oh, well. I mean, when the guy's getting fucking, clearly outshined by Phantasma and putting over guys like Phantasma and Pagano in that pin, I mean, I went ape shit on this show with showing them the pinfall that he took in the AAA match when he took that tombstone. And then it was like a solid minute later, he doesn't move. Someone covers him and gets a 3 count. It was just like, what the fuck are you doing? I mean, I look at it like this. TNA doesn't have all these countless hours of programming like the WWF or WWE does. But I look, my model is always the old school WWF. When Hulk, and take WCW into counter too. When Hulk Hogan lost a match, it was fucking huge. Anyone remember when Arn Anderson pinned Hulk Hogan? That's right, that's pesky son of a bitch, Arn, I'm calling you out. Anyone remember that shit? It was big. It was huge on Nitro. It was like, fuck, my mind is blown. I remember when The Undertaker beat him. It was crazy. It was, and they've just completely killed the mystique of EC3. And I think that they've really, and I hate to say this, but when you look at the way that they've used Rosemary and the way that they've killed Allie's heat, or not heat, but her momentum, is like America's sweetheart, and they've really, I don't think Rosemary's a jobber and she's ruined, but she's not the dominant force that she once was. And I feel like the ball is just being dropped. And that's the most frustrating thing to me. I think right now Eli Drake is legitimately the only super, super bright thing going on right now. And I'm not knocking the roster by any means, but I feel like it's Eli Drake and then everyone else is underneath him is the way that I feel. And it's not necessarily booking or whatever. It's just Eli is outshining them, but they're just not being used right as well. It's like kind of contradicted myself, but I don't know. You guys feel the same, or you see it differently maybe?
Yeah, definitely don't see it differently. I just don't know what to add after everything you just said. I was going to bring Rosemary up, but you threw that in there as well.
I think they're doing a little better job protecting Rosemary than what people are giving credit for. She did pretty much hold the belt the first half of this year, right? She is the featured star, at least she was, on the GWN app background. They put her in the most prominent match for females at Bound for Glory, mind you, that got canceled, but not her fault. So I don't know that they're screwing her over. I think what they're trying to do is build a whole division. And I think somebody had to do the job to make that happen. So I think that her being the cornerstone of the division, I don't care what people say about Gail Kim. She's taken that from Gail. That maybe had to happen. It's a shame, but kudos to her for doing it. As far as Eli Drake's concerned, he's definitely the one guy they've got booked pretty well at this point. Although I think that Johnny Impact and Alberto Patron has been booked as, an absolute beast. The one thing I'll say about Eli is that you got to watch it because he is a shtick guy. And sometimes he sounds like The Rock. Sometimes he's flat out being Ric Flair, right? Sometimes he's play into the crowd like Hogan plays the crowd, and other times it sounds a lot like Steve Austin with his, yeah, versus, what stuff. So that's the one knock that I'll give Eli Drake. I'll say his matches have been great since he's taken over as champ. I mean, definitely putting on better matches than I've ever seen him put on before. And I wouldn't count Bobby Lashley out either. Bobby Lashley's been on fire. They finally figured out that they can't keep the belt on Lashley all the time, so they've given him something to do that didn't require the belt. And I think he's been booked very well. And Moose hasn't been booked poorly either. It's just that Moose, I think, needs to get the rub and go over on some point to really build him up.
Old school, you got anything to chime in real fast?
No, I'm good.
Yeah, I do think, I mean, looking at it right now, I think 2018 needs to be Moose's year at some point. And here's the thing, too. I mean, I mentioned those 4 guys, and I really feel like I don't think Davey Richards had the potential to ever become like a household name, but I think he could have been, a pretty solid star as a heel role. And that Natural Born Killers gimmick that he had last year, I think could have went over really well, too, at some point. But I mean, look, here's I take it like this. The roster is not what it once was at one point, but let's say that they did capitalize with the Pope. They did capitalize with EC3. They did capitalize with Eli Drake. And, you have these 3 building blocks, and the product is getting better ratings. You got people paying more attention because they hit the jackpot that they should have. I mean, if you go back to, say 2015, even 16 at times, I mean, you look at the supporting cast, even though it wasn't what it was, I mean, we could have had Rude and Aries, Angle, EY, Lashley, the Hardys were there, Gail Kim, Taryn, James Storm, Eddie Edwards, Galloway, MVP, Magnus, et cetera, et cetera. And then even last year, Mike and Maria were good additions. They got real over. And you think where they were at, if they capitalized with those guys and that Broken Hardys game, it got as huge as it could. I mean, and then Decay was big too. I mean, don't you think like the company could be in a much better position than they are now? And that's what fucking frustrates me a lot as well. Am I wrong?
No, not at all.
All right. So, I mean, look, you add to that, and then let's say all this stuff is going the way that it does. Then Anthem comes in, we get Jarrett back, we're getting more talent. But then we get not only that, but the X Division comes back to full force, which fucking kind of was a stability of the company. I just feel like there's so many missed opportunities that we could have went with for this company to do bigger. And that's, it comes to the point now where we talk, what can they do as a business? What can they do on TV? I mean, what can we get Impact back to, like, get out of this slump? I mean, I want to get back to the point where, like, we don't have to worry if the company's going to go out of business all the time, and it's just this Anthem thing and stuff. It's still, it's frustrated a lot of fans, rubbed us a long way. I'm definitely in better spirits about the company than I was leading into Bound for Glory, and it sounds like you two are the same. That's a good thing. I know Chef isn't, but, a lot of us fans are. So anything we chime in before we go to the topic questions here, guys? I'm taking that as a no. All right, so I just want to know. I mean, we'll start with the Impact.
I think we'll interrupt you if we want to chime in.
That works for me.
Yep.
All right. So the Impact dude. I mean, so question, and fans at home listening. I mean, feel free to give us your feedback, whether it's on Silent, YouTube, whatnot, any of these. But I mean, Impact dude, what made you, as a fan, what made you grow and love TNA Impact Wrestling in the first place when you very first started turning on? Man, like what hooked you?
I mean, it wasn't WWE and it was wrestling. And honest to goodness, that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a good product, and it was the closest thing that I was getting back to my WCW days. And so, when WCW went down, there were a number of years where it was like, well, I'm done with wrestling. And then, you're flipping the channels around and you find this TNA bit, and it's like, oh, wow, that's wrestling. And that's different. And it took a while to grow used to the six-sided ring, no doubt. But the fact that they were trying, and they were trying hard, and everybody had a positive attitude, and how do you not want to root for the little guy? I just don't understand all these people that hate on, Impact, TNA, GFW, whatever the heck they're calling themselves today. Because why don't you want to root for the little guy? Why don't you want to see the underdog win? Everybody loves an underdog story. And that is probably it as much as anything.
For me, TNA had energy, which was not something I was getting out of wrestling at the time. You didn't get that out of WWF or WWE, whatever you want to call it. You didn't really get that anywhere. And all of a sudden, you turn on Impact. Well, not Impact, but the weekly shows, weekly pay-per-views, and it was fun. there was a lot of energy. There's a lot of excitement about everything, and it made you want to keep watching. The show had hooks. It had, great wrestling, fun stories, interesting characters. It was just something I wanted to keep watching. And of course, they had the X Division, which could hook anybody. They had Low-Ki, dude can suck it on that. Jerry Lynn, amazing wrestler. They had Amazing Red, and of course AJ Styles. It was just, you could tell it was the beginning of something that I wanted to get involved in.
I was born in '84, and I'm the youngest one here, even though I feel old all the time with other people. But I grew up just loving the WWF. The WWF was everything. I mean, Hogan and Bret Hart were everything to me. And then I was kind of anti watching any other program. I knew about WCW's existence, but then when Hogan went to WCW, that's when I really started paying attention. And then ECW came along, and I was just a huge fan of all three. I was always a WWF fan until a few years back. But it just, I always knew competition was best for the business. Like I do not love wrestling at all anymore, but I used to just fucking love wrestling to death. And I knew that like having a different option than the WWE was not only best for business, but best for the people like wanting jobs and working in the business, to get better work. Let's face it, the one thing I was worried about the most was Vince McMahon kind of killing off and ruining careers, because I saw with so many guys from ECW, WCW, etc. And then you start watching WWF after that buyout, and they were just fucking killing off a lot of people. So I tune in, I hear about this company, and it takes me a little bit to tune in. But then I see one of my favorites of all time, Raven, on there. I hated how the WWE used him, and Raven's getting a push. Kevin Nash, Diamond Dallas Page, Sandman, Sabu. I mean, they were getting used decently where they wouldn't be, used decently elsewhere. Jeff Hardy comes along. I always was a Jeff Hardy fan. And then, those guys that kind of get me into it. But then the young talent just grew on me, seeing AJ Styles, Samoa Joe, Chris Sabin. They just stood out so much. And then it's like the fucking fan base, that crowd, dude, that rabid ass crowd was like ECW. And it's just, I mean, that's the thing that blows my mind to this day. When you just watch Impact and these crowds, you can hear pin drops at times. But back in the days, this was the wildest, craziest crowd in wrestling by far. And TNA always came off to me as like that little company that could. It's like this company has all the potential in the world to just blow WWF away. And then, the X Division, like Old School Heel just said, the X Division was awesome. It was like the Cruiserweight division, but a little different, but it was still amazing. Eventually there became the Knockouts division. It was like, wow, women's wrestling actually isn't a joke. There are women that can actually work and wrestle. And, I never realized how much I loved tag team wrestling until WWE killed it off. And TNA just had this fucking fantastic tag team division that I will still say to this day is one of the 2 or 3 greatest tag team divisions of all time. And then, the thing that really sealed it for me was that Christian Cage push. Because Christian had become my favorite wrestler when he was in the WWE. And I don't blame, I'll say this all the time, I don't blame WWE for not making Christian champion when they were trying to push Cena and Batista to the stars that they became. But Christian was the man. He came into TNA, blew it off the roof, and that was what really just, this was my brand and company, and I'll always go about that. And that's just, that's what made me love this company. It just kills me to see where it's come to from then. And I'm, we kind of go over that, but I mean, like as a wrestling fan itself, what do you look for in a wrestling show, Old School Heel?
Well, I want it to be entertaining, but do you want me to break it down into categories or just be real broad with this?
I mean, we'll actually kind of dive into it a little bit later. Maybe the breaking down of it itself, because we're going to have the HeelCast other members some opinions in there. But I mean, just when you tune in, I mean, what exactly are you looking for to kind of hook you in? I guess just kind of like a couple of topics.
Yeah, well, I'm looking for a complete package. To be honest, I'm not looking for a variety show like some people say. I don't think they actually want like song and dance and all these other kind of things. I don't need what the WWE's been giving to people. I don't need, say, like a talk show segment. And I mean, I like the facts of life and whatnot, but I don't need that kind of entertainment hook. But I do need awesome wrestling. The wrestling needs to be engaging. It needs to tell a story in the ring. I don't want to just see a bunch of guys doing things that they don't look like they know what they're doing very well. Like they're just kind of, they're just trying to get their stuff in. And it needs good characters, guys who draw my attention, who get me focused on them and not on what's going on around me. So you definitely need those two things.
How about the Impact dude?
It starts with balance. And that means that you have to have a combination of quality wrestling and a quality entertainment package in general. And then everything has to make sense. And I can't stress this enough. Don't just throw matches out there for the sake of throwing matches out there. Have a reason to have a match. Make it have a purpose. Make there a story behind every match. And not every story has to be told with outside the ring segments. You can tell a story inside the ring as well. They've done that for years. The AWA used to do that. Ring of Honor does that. Back in WCW, the cruiserweights, they got a little time outside the ring, they did, but most of their storytelling was inside the ring. But you always knew why they were wrestling. They weren't just random people that were wrestling a match. So make everything mean something. That's how you keep somebody engaged throughout the entire show. Otherwise, you get to a point, it's like, I go watch something else. But if they know what's going on and they understand why and they get that there's a point to it and they're utilizing the entire roster, that's another thing, utilize the entire roster, it keeps things flowing, it keeps things moving a lot better throughout a 2-hour show. Old school heel hit the nail on the head. Once you have all that, it's called have a character. I can't stand these vanilla midget types, and I'm not a big Kevin Nash fan, but it's the God's honest truth. I'm going to go and I'm going to get my spots in. And in fact, old school heel, I'm pretty sure I'm stealing your lines here. Am I not?
Yeah. You're reading right from my script.
I think I am. I think I've got your script in front of me on this stuff. But in addition to the things that I already said, it's important to really note that I don't like watching spot fests. I mean, I like watching matches with cool spots.
Yeah.
But show me some character while you're doing it. Showing me that you can just do flips over and over and over again. And yes, folks, I'm talking about Ring of Honor and I'm talking about Flip Gordon. It was really cool to watch like once. But his character work is awful. It's awful. So I don't want to watch him again. It's like, I saw that. That was really cool the way he did all those flips. I get the point. And now it's time to move on. So when you have characters, you invest in them. And that's the key. You want to allow people to engage in the product and invest in the characters. And that happens by doing character development and giving them stories. And then from there, things like creativity, that's fun too. And logic, I don't need to get kidnapped and have just kind of like, and then he comes back, right? I think the same thing happened to Bram. Just don't do that stuff. Make it all make sense and then be consistent. And this is the one thing that ROH and WWE do that Impact has never done. They're consistent. I do not like the WWE product at all, but you know what you're getting when you turn in, folks. As soon as you turn that show on, you know what you're getting. Same thing with Ring of Honor. I do watch that product. I do like that product, but it's not as good a product, but it's consistent. And so it allows them to grow. So, Raven Effect, if you're asking me what matters the most, those are the things.
I'd like to go back to the storytelling with the cruiserweights in WCW. If you look at it, the story there is basically geared more towards sports. The reason the wrestling is they're trying to move up the ranks. They're trying to be better. And I've seen that kind of story being put down a lot just in the wrestling community. But it's basically what wrestling is built on. You're competing. This is a competition. So what are your all's opinions on that?
I agree with you completely. And let's face it, there's not enough time in the show to give everybody all these talking segments anyway. So you have the cruiserweight matches that are fun, action-packed matches that supplement some of the slower heavyweight matches. They don't get the talk time, but they get longer matches. I mean, old school heel, what you're saying is absolutely spot on. It's a necessary element.
No, I agree completely. And I mean, I also feel that was part of the X division. The X division was never really, there wasn't a whole lot of talk times, promo time, all of that. There was at times, just like at times in the cruiserweight division with Jericho and Dean Malenko kind of a thing. But no, they let the cruiserweights go out there. They told a story. It was competition, etc. And we're going to get into this competition discussion here later on because that's I know that's one thing that Old School Hill and myself are really big on. that really gets our gears grinding when we have this discussion. But I 100% agree with you, and I miss that aspect of it. Let's see. You guys had anything else on the cruiserweight talk there?
Crickets.
Yeah,
All right.
We're cool, bro. We're cool.
We're good. We're good. We like interrupting you, so if we're not interrupting you, we're good.
Right. Makes me feel better inside when I get to interrupt you.
I know. I live for that.
Everyone.
The whole reason I do the show.
A couple of things I did want to chime in on as far as what the TNA dude had mentioned about like this Samoa Joe kidnapping and all, and then it happened to Bram. Yeah, you're absolutely right, except Bram didn't come back with like a dick on his face like Joe did. But,
now we know what happened to Joe.
Exactly.
And why they never really mentioned it.
You don't want to talk about mushroom stamps on the show too much, but it was called TNA, and Vince Russo was writing it, so who knows? Before I kind of just give my opinion, I mean, I asked the other guys on the HeelCast, what exactly they're looking for in a wrestling program. My boy Chef, who actually kind of went in with what Impact Dude was just talking about. Chef's man a few words when I asked him. His answer was legitimately stability. Yeah. Nothing else. Let's see here. I've got Hurls' info here right here. Hurls has told me that he's looking for drama, great matches, and unpredictability. The thought of anything can, like the fact that. Hurls says he wants to feel like the thought of anything that can happen. And I'm let's see here. And Wrestling Robert says he's looking for young and athletic talent and easy to watch from top to finish booking that can also keep me wondering what is going to happen next as soon as the episode is over. I mean, there's two things there. We talked about, cliffhangers earlier too. Or was that actually off the air? I can't remember. Look, for me, the things that I'm missing, I want to see that balance between wrestling and, storytelling and promos and all that segments sort of thing. But I'm tuning in to watch wrestling. I feel like there needs to be a balance because, look, I mean, Ring of Honor, I can enjoy it or used to be able to enjoy it from time to time, but it's never anything that's going to make me fucking feel like I have to watch every week. It's something that's going to appeal to me, that's going to keep me as a wrestling fan if Impact ever did go out of business. But the things that I'm really missing, I miss fresh feuds that are like spread out. I feel like everything happens such a cluster and so quick. That it eliminates the potential of like the big fight feel, and that I feel like the big fight feel is the biggest thing missing in wrestling now. I think I want to see big builds to big payoffs. You know what I mean? Like I miss the old model that WWF used to do, was there's 4 or 5 pay-per-views in a year, and like the big matches that happen. And I miss seeing the prestige and championships. I feel like if you watch the WWE, there's literally like people used to shit on Vince Russo for degrading their title belts the way that they did. Dude, WWE is way shittier than what Vince Russo did. And Russo put his on David Arquette and himself. I actually feel like for the most part, Impact has done pretty good keeping at least their world title prestigious. I feel like, other than maybe Chris Sabin, what Matt Hardy did as broken Matt Hardy kind of saved that. And also what Eric Young transformed into after his title reign kind of saved having those two names as a belt or as a champion. But I mean, I'll get into this here in a minute, but I mean, those are just the kind of things that I'm really missing right now. I mean, the next question I kind of have, I mean, this is the stuff that's really got me going on Asylum, was just the importance of characters and gimmicks, and promos and stuff, as opposed to just the wrestling itself. I mean, look, Hulk Hogan, The Rock, Stone Cold Steve Austin. I mean, these are the 3 biggest names in the history of the business. I mean, you could say like Goldberg and stuff too. None of them had like some crazy zany backstory like Kane, or were from parts unknown like the Ultimate Warrior, sort of that kind of vibe. But I mean, they all had characters and personas. I mean, Eli Drake and EC3, they resemble that. The Pope kind of resembles that. How important is that overall, especially in this day and age where it's kind of hard to, like the Ultimate Warrior and Papa Shango wouldn't be 2 people you could really buy into in this day and age. You know what I mean? Old School Hill, your thoughts on that one?
Who are we rooting for right now that doesn't have a character or doesn't have a strong character?
Eddie Edwards?
Yeah, that's true. Who else?
Braxton Sutter.
We're rooting for Braxton Sutter.
I said rooting for.
When did we start doing that?
I'm ready for him to get fired. Sorry, Allie.
Well, we need mid-carders.
And jobbers.
And jobbers, yeah. Yeah, I think characters, more so than gimmicks. Characters are very important. Like, I don't know. You look at the mid card in WWF back in the early '90s. The mid card is what drove the show. You had Hogan, you had Warrior, you had these guys who were, the top headliners, the guys who, sold the pay-per-views, but they were rarely there. But you were tuning in every week hoping to see them, but you were entertained by, like Jake the Snake Roberts. The guy, he was incredible. He had incredible intensity. You had Jimmy Superfly Snuka. That's not really much of a character, but he was entertaining. You had Roddy Piper.
He definitely had some character issues.
Yeah, too many coconuts. But
I digress.
Like if you put guys with no character in with guys with character, the guys without character stick out like a sore thumb in the wrong way. They're not compelling. They don't make you want to come back. I mean, some of that's offset with great wrestling, especially with Eddie Edwards. You want to watch him because he's great in the ring and he's a guy you feel like you can root for. But then you have, well, I'm not going to use that as an example. Everybody likes that guy for some reason, so it's going to prove me wrong. So never mind. I'll just be quiet now.
Who is it?
No.
Oh, come on. You went there. It's too late.
Jesse, I forgot his last name.
Goddard?
Yeah.
Yeah,
God, he bores the hell out of me.
Yeah, I know.
He's small. He's not very talented, but everybody keeps pushing him like he's going to be great. I don't get it.
He's got a nice drop kick, and
that's true. He does have a nice drop kick.
Last year, he's had a great physique. I mean, I've pounded off to him a couple of times.
but look at this.
This show's kind of drowning. I got to say something fucked up.
Johnny Impact, step aside. Here comes Jesse Goddard.
It's been 7 years since Hogan came into TNA. It's been 4 to 5 years since the roster really started to get watered down. You got guys on comment on the site who are in their teens. They have no idea what it used to be like. So yeah, they're going to root for guys like Jesse Goddard.
Oh, I don't know. There's a lot of other people to root for.
Yeah,
when Goddard is back, is it? I'm sorry to interrupt you there.
That's kind of why I thought of him, because somebody says he's coming back next year.
He says he's basically opening the door and saying, "Hey, I think I'm going to come back." And he left on great terms. I'm sure if he wants to come back, they'll have him back. There's no reason not to. No. He is a quality human being, but he's just not going to be the next world champion, folks. That's just write that down. You heard it here first on the HeelCast. Jesse Goddard's for world champion. It's going to be a while. That'd be nice if he did. I mean, but he's got to do some improvement first too.
And like what I was mentioning earlier, some of the guys who were on the mid card back in the day, not only were they great characters, but they were solid wrestlers. So it's the complete package. You have to have all of it, but you have to have the character as well.
Well, what they had was ring psychology, and that's missing today. And
big time.
I hate to give this guy his props, but really the last guy with really good ring psychology that left was Bully Ray. I mean, Bully Ray had great ring psychology. Yeah. And I can't stand the guy. Everybody knows that, but if you're gonna call it a spade, call it a spade.
Exactly.
And so when I look back and I look at Jake the Snake Roberts, I mean, he had a great gimmick. Right. Mm-hmm. And he scared you because that snake was coming out, and then he changed snake types, and that got even scarier. But more importantly, he was not a phenomenal wrestler. He couldn't go in the ring the way some of these guys in Impact in the mid card can go. Okay.
And but wrestling's changed so much too since then.
Absolutely. But if you look at guys like, some of the bigger guys, even like Congo Kong and Fallah Bahh, and some of the things that they do, it's over and above. Now, nobody's ever going to tell me, or actually you can tell me, I'm just going to walk away, that they're better than Jake the Snake Roberts, because Jake the Snake Roberts had phenomenal in-ring psychology, and that's important, and it's missing today. It's just flat out wrestling. It's not just Impact. It's everywhere. And characters and gimmicks, they go a long way to hiding your flaws. If you've got a good gimmick, it can hide your flaws. And they've all got flaws. So characters and gimmicks, without them, I mean, you're just running around. I know everybody's hot on this Flip Gordon kid, and I know why, because he does some really cool stuff. But my God, if you guys watched Ring of Honor the last couple of weeks, they got him going up against I can't want to call them NWO Light, but they're the Bullet Club. And he's like recruiting like he's some sort of like an army guy with this clean cut haircut, and he's so vanilla. And it's like, you know what, dude, just stick to doing your flips and develop a character, and then come talk to me. And I think when they can put that together, they're going to do well. But what I don't understand is why they're not emphasizing the character point. And now I'm sorry, guys, I'm going to go into this, but really taking acting classes would suit you well. Look at some of the best characters and gimmicks in wrestling. Rosemary, cough, cough, right? Who has a theatrical background, okay? And you've got Eli Drake, who moved out to California to do, TV and stuff. These are people that actually have a theatrical background. And why they don't make the wrestlers do that as a part of their training beats the crap out of me.
That's some good points. Imagine if they took two collegiate wrestlers, put them in a wrestling ring, and had them, choreograph match. How is that going to go over compared to two proven characters in wrestling doing the exact same match?
Well, let's phrase it a different way. That's how it all got started, right? Back in the Lou Thez days. And then they realized it was too boring, so they started fixing the matches, and now we are where we are. So
put it 100 years in the making, basically.
Put a different way, that's where it all started, and there's a reason it's not there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of tough to call that one. I mean, you bring up Jake the Snake Roberts. His gimmick was really just having a snake, though. I mean, other than having a snake, he was just, pretty goddamn good at what he did. I mean, you look at the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, that was a brilliant gimmick, but also DiBiase played it well. I mean, and then you looked at shit like the Berserker and the Goon, and, not only bad gimmicks, but just guys that weren't very good at what they did. And
the Red Rooster.
Yeah.
Poor Terry Taylor.
Yeah. But I mean, like Mr. Perfect, would you call that necessarily a gimmick?
Oh, it was a phenomenal gimmick.
Is it really
definitely a gimmick?
Oh, heck yeah.
So EC3, that a gimmick or a character? Because I feel like Mr. Perfect is more of a character than a gimmick.
Well, you got both. It's a combination. And his Mr. Perfect's gimmick is being perfect. His arrogance is his character.
I mean,
very well said.
I feel like one of my favorite wrestlers of all time, Rick Martel, got a stupid fucking gimmick, and you saw it with Zema Ion, but Rick Martel just owned that shit. He is the model with the arrogance and all that. And, I feel like Rick Martel is just this underrated guy, just sort of a thing. But then, in old school heel, I mean, him and I kind of talked about this guy the other day, and this is something that I would love to see reincarnated. It's kind of happening in my fantasy booking thing I'm doing. But I mean, talking about character, Brian Pillman.
Yeah.
I mean, are the days of, like the shitty, weird kind of gimmicks, are they done? Because I feel like they kind of died off in the mid-'90s. I mean, we see gimmicks, but it's not the, like, corny, unbelievable ones, like we used to see, sort of a thing. Do you think they're, like, those can't work anymore at all? Am I right? Like, it's impossible?
It changed. When WCW started whipping WWF's butt, Vince called a meeting after a show and told them, look, these gimmicks, which were largely based on occupation, weren't working, and that they needed to reinvent themselves if they were going to compete. And so they needed to be more like themselves. And that's where you got Stone Cold Steve Austin and some of these other gimmicks. So they became more real. And then when the early 2000s and the Attitude Era and all that kind of hit, it was a time where, people were really being very rebellious as a country. And so it was kind of like the perfect thing for the time. And we haven't gotten back to it. So to answer your question, Raven Effect, I see where we got away from it. I don't know that it couldn't work again. It might be the kind of thing that wrestling needs, just to be different again, that a new generation of fans hasn't seen. But, I guess if it was something that people were screaming for, somebody would probably start doing it. It's working great for Rosemary.
Yeah, it is. Unfortunately, I mean, I feel like she should be a bigger star than she is. I feel like she could move the needle. I kind of blame the needle not moving on the company much more than I do any of these wrestlers, because I feel like, with Rosemary, with Eli Drake, with EC3, you have these guys that could be household names. It could be major stars that, are better than what you see in the WWE. They're working for the wrong company, unfortunately, and the company and the network aren't doing them much favors. You look at one of the biggest stars ever, and I know you're not going to be happy that I say this, but I fucking love the guy in every way. A gimmick that would never work again is the Ultimate Warrior. Warrior is massive. So it just, that kind of a thing wouldn't work in today's society at all. I mean, you guys mentioned that the business has changed. Absolutely, it has. I hate more that the fact that the wrestling fan has changed and evolved more than wrestling itself. And I think, I feel something that's underrated is like UFC, MMA being so big. It's hard for people to get as into pro wrestling again, knowing that it's fake. When you can watch real fighting and see it looks nothing the same. But I feel like maybe what they need is a gimmick that hasn't been done, something that pushes the envelope, something that's way different than you're seeing elsewhere. And, for me, like, the thing that fucking pops into my mind, like I was talking to Old School Heel about yesterday, whether he agrees with me or not, I mean, is, Brian Pillman, we kind of lost that genius before it happened, before we actually got to see it play its way out. And I feel, if something like that, something just completely out there, not Matt Hardy kind of out there, but just so different. If Impact could find someone that could do that and just promote it right, if plug it right, use this person right, I think, like, when you combine that with the other three, Rosemary, EC3, and Eli Drake, I mean, we might be sitting on something. Any thoughts, disagreements?
I kind of want to go slightly off topic, but with something you were talking about. It is the wrestling fan who has changed, and we've tried to change wrestling. We have a weekly show, but we have people who talk about this weekly show every day of the week. We get antsy waiting for something to change, and then we demand change quicker than it should happen. We can't just let the show gradually progress. We have to have it our way. We want to book the show. It's kind of a reason I wanted to do the booking challenge, is to show people this is not an easy thing to do. This is not something that, we shouldn't be so demanding and let things progress on their own and see where things are going to go. Because as we're judging these people's entries, they're wanting us to be more lenient on them while we're criticizing the company.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And that's why, one of the things that I wanted to do, and I know I got outvoted on it, and that's fine, but is actually judge the show as well. So people see where they fit in, so they can see what they're doing right and wrong and exactly how difficult it is. But it is a very difficult thing to do, to write 2 hours of TV every single week without being able to get that feedback, right? And dealing with a limited set of people that are there. Somebody gets injured during a taping, we might not necessarily realize it, but they might have to change the way that they work on the show. It's a very fluid thing and a very difficult thing as well.
And the thing that I want to chime into, I mean, like, I'm involved in this competition. Like, I'm the first to admit I'm not a very creative person. It's hard to think of these kind of things. 2 hours of TV every week, but you're also 2 hours of TV a week in a business where, can you tell, like, what has not been done? It's so fucking hard to be original, to do something in wrestling that's never been done before. I think that's the thing that people are missing. I mean, literally the only things that you could do that haven't been done in wrestling before are just going to be extremely tasteless and fucked up and shouldn't be on TV.
Well, I don't know. Billy Corgan was doing some new things. I mean, to go back to your original question and point about, about doing things differently. I think they just had to put some effort into it. And one of the things that I've never understood about Impact, and honestly, it probably goes to every wrestling promotion, but, Impact's the one that we know and love. So that's the one we're going to criticize the most. They don't put effort into every single wrestler on the show. They haven't done anything with KM since he's been there. Okay, they're starting to do something with him now. They debuted him and they said, okay, yeah, why don't you try that "don't call me a liar" thing, and they forgot about him. They've build Congo Kong out to be some sort of a big beast guy, and then we forgot about him. And they just started with Fallah Bahh and having him smack himself on the head a little bit. You know what I'm saying? So they don't follow through and give everybody that backstory and give us reasons to invest in them. Part of it's a revolving door of talent, right? This goes back to just having stability. And I think you said that it was Chef that said stability, right, Raven? In fact, they've got to have stability throughout the company and a stable set of characters. I am so sick of reading people say, "Who do you want to sign this week? Who should we sign?" No, develop the characters that you've got and invest in them and keep them coming back, because the company's not investing in them because they're not sure they're bringing them back. It's a cyclic path. And it's sort of like abusive parents, right? You get abused by your parent, you abuse your children, and it just keeps going and going. At some point, it's got to stop, and at some point, they've got to just start saying, you know what, we're going to do something with you. And maybe that person's Taya, maybe it's Rosemary, maybe it's KM. Who the heck knows? But do something with everybody.
And you make a really good point about this. Let's go back to the Attitude Era and a little bit before that. Look at Rocky Maivia. Everybody hated the guy. The WWE did not give up on him. They kept progressing. They kept pushing him. And next thing you know, he's The Rock, and he's one of the biggest talents ever. And then you go and look at the Ringmaster. I mean, that was just a terrible gimmick they gave Steve Austin. And he let himself come through, his own character, his own personality come through, and he turned it into something huge. But they didn't give up on him. They were consistently pushing these guys, consistently using them.
Unlike EC3.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Unlike James Storm, who's always been over. I don't know why they never pushed him more. But they don't stay consistent with the guys. I mean, Old School Hill, you're spot on with that. You've got to get behind these people, and you've got to stay behind them. And when something doesn't work, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, for crying out loud. Fix the water.
That's a great point, isn't it, Matt?
It is. Whoever that Matt guy is. I don't really care, though.
I hate Matt Hardy.
Me too, that broken son of a bitch. Totally just had a brain fart there is what I wanted to chime in to say, but I mean, I absolutely do agree with what you're talking about there. I guess, to kind of progress it forward, then we come to the whole storylines and angles versus the wrestling thing. So, what do you feel about it? I mean, this is the thing that really fucking got me started and sparked on this discussion and doing this show, because there's a certain bear from Russia on Impact who drives me crazy and pisses me off with this whole thing. Like, my thoughts on this, man, there's a reason that Ring of Honor doesn't appeal to me that much, but I tune in to watch wrestling for a wrestling show. If I wanted to watch like storylines and gimmicks and angles and drama and stuff, I would watch a normal TV show or a movie with fucking 10 times better actors that can actually not only act, but you can do a whole lot more with the storyline and stuff, and show and story, drama, comedy, all that, 100 times better. If people are saying that want to see nothing but storylines and angles, why the fuck are you watching wrestling? Go watch an actual show or movie. That's the thing that bothers me here. The other thing, and I know Old School Hill and I kind of are on this topic, which we're going to discuss in a minute, but it's the whole, and this is the thing I fucking hate about the involvement of the wrestling fans. These people who go with the whole who are these guys and girls, and why are they fighting? Every match has to have a fucking feud or angle or storyline behind it, and that's stuff that bothers me. But we're going to talk about that in a second. But I watch to watch wrestling. Old School Hill, what about you?
I watch to watch wrestling. Just let it evolve. We don't need every bit of the story right off the bat. When you read a story, or when you're reading a book, you're going through page by page. You're gaining new knowledge. You're gaining new information. Everybody wants the book already written, already read, already handed to them as soon as the character shows up on TV. It doesn't make sense. Let them tell you the story. Let it evolve. See if you like it.
Which is really funny because you actually just said that you're there to watch wrestling, but the truth is that you're kind of there to watch a show with a story that has wrestling.
I like. Oh, go ahead.
At least that's the second part of what you said. That's what I'm there for. I am there. I like to watch wrestling. If I didn't like to watch wrestling in the ring, there's a whole lot of other channels, folks, I could tune into. Be happy to do so. So to say I don't like wrestling would be a ridiculous statement. But I want to invest in the people on the show. I want to invest in the characters. And that happens by giving storylines and doing vignettes and promos and all of that stuff, and not just having them all go in the ring and be competitive. Competitive is great. You need competitive. We already talked about that. We covered that, but it can't be all that.
Yeah.
And then there has to be that wrestling thing, because if you take out the wrestling, I could probably find a good movie to watch with a better story. So you need to have both, or it doesn't really work for me.
Exactly. It's both. Like, if I'm watching it on TV, I want the whole shebang. I can go to a show. I can go to a local show. I don't care about story at all. I will gladly sit there for a couple hours and I'll watch wrestling and I'll love it. No problem. But as soon as I come home, turn it on the TV, I want something that's going to engage me more than just what's happening in the ring. But I also want what's happening in the ring to engage me.
Even at the shows that I go to, the local shows, when they get in the ring, they rile up the crowd. They get you excited to want to root against them too. So don't get me wrong. There's not a lot of that in the local shows, but that little bit where they go out, and I know, guys, a lot of times it's cheesy, but it just makes you scream at them when they get in there. So that's cool,
And you made a good point in that wrestling, no matter what aspect of wrestling we're looking at, it's all a story. Everything is built around telling a story.
Exactly.
I agree. I mean, you'd always hear Bret Hart talk about, telling a story in the ring and whatnot. I mean, that's one thing. I mean, I guess it kind of seems like we're all kind of in agreement. I mean, look, Ring of Honor, there's not much of a balance. It's like way more wrestling, very little storytelling. WWE, on the other hand, tends to be like more storylines, a whole lot more than wrestling itself. At least when I was watching it, when I stopped watching it, is kind of how it was. I feel like the three of us all kind of feel there should be like an equal balance. Am I right?
Yeah,
I do, and I'm going to throw a bone to old school heel here, because I have a feeling he's going to go off on this one. But so old school heel, you're a professional wrestler, right? And your finisher is called the HeelCast. I mean, that would be a perfectly appropriate name for your finisher. Do you
terrible
really want
show and a terrible name for a finisher? Just saying.
I agree with that, but it would be very appropriate, because I have a feeling you'd be a terrible wrestler. So, would you really want Raven Effect kicking out of the HeelCast?
No.
Would you really want to kick out of? God only knows what Raven Effect's finisher would be. Good God above. Would you really want to kick out of his finisher?
It'd be
Honestly,
called the Raven
no,
Effect DVD. DDT. Super original. Don't sue me.
If you kick out of his finisher, you're not putting him over, are you?
No.
No.
I'm devaluing him.
Devaluing him. And him kicking out of your finisher doesn't really make the fact that you wind up winning the match at the end via a roll-up doesn't really help put you over either. No. So when they do this stuff in Ring of Honor where they kick out of each other's finishers over and over and over again, or dare I say, and I actually like the Bucks. I don't know why I'm getting ready to rip them apart, but they use Shawn Michaels' finisher over and over and over again, to the point where they call it a super kick party.
Yeah.
That's, to me, right? They're taking a guy in Shawn Michaels who clearly they look up to, because they do all these super kicks, and they're just basically sticking their thumb up his backside.
Yeah.
Over and over and over again. It's disrespectful.
I miss the days when that was called the Savate kick, before it was Michaels' finisher. And it was used, but it was used more of a setup, a stun move. And then, boom, it's Michaels' finisher. He's got it. Nobody should be really using it. Of course, he's not in the business anymore. But, man, how many super kicks does it take in a match?
You remember when Gorilla Monsoon used to call it the side crescent kick when Shawn Michaels first started doing it, when he first got that singles push? And he was actually using a side suplex as his finisher to start with?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was using that weird classical song as his theme song right before the Sexy Boy theme.
I was going to say, is Sensational Sherry considered classical?
Don't mess with the Sexy Boy song. That was awesome.
It was actually the same song that an airline was using in their commercial at the time.
Well, he sings it himself. Doesn't he sing that song himself?
Yeah. No, this is before
he does now,
the theme.
Oh.
It was like that brief window when he just turned heel and everything was changing.
Oh.
I actually don't remember that part, but I remember Narcissus, like Sleeper, having that kind of classical song. But,
Mm-hmm.
I totally just drew a complete blank from what I wanted to say.
It's all right. It happened to me earlier.
You shoot blanks all the time, Raven Effect. It's all good.
Thank the fuck Christ I do. My God.
I know.
Oh, man. At least in my younger days, I don't really get around like I used to, but yeah, back in the younger
Child support
It's probably
would be
good, too.
unbelievable.
days, child support or clinic abortion bill. Damn, I go there.
Raven Effect is 20 kids.
I'm the Antonio Cromartie of HeelCast, and oh fuck, what was I going to say? My God, something that kind of drove me crazy, but I'm just gonna forget all about what I wanted to say. Anyways, you guys continue on, I guess, for a sec, if you want.
Sure.
Was there anything else you still had to say on this topic?
No, I'm content to listen to you try to remember
I know
what
this
you
is
want to
pretty
say.
fun.
I'm
Sure,
sure
the viewer- The
as
listeners
soon as the show's
love it
over.
right now.
This is the best part of the show, folks.
Somebody
I know.
hung their head down low and said, "Yeah, it is."
Yeah.
I hate
It
that
is.
person.
It's a shame. It's a shame this show really already has a name because brain fart would be like the perfect name for this show.
We can just call this episode "Making an Impact a Brain Fart Again." Look, I guess for me, I mean, I the thing I get fucking worked up on is this whole, the fan evolving, and the fan always said, like these two, there shouldn't be a match unless these two have a reason to wrestle. And the way that I look at this, man, is pro wrestling. I don't like to necessarily use the term, but okay, it's sports entertainment. It's a fake fight, okay, but it's supposed to be sport-esque. It's sport-esque. It's a combat sport. So when you think of combat sport, that means it's close to two things: boxing, MMA, kickboxing, etc. Right? So Look, why does any boxer box? Why does any UFC fighter fight? Why does any kickboxer go in there and have a kickboxing match? It's because they're going in there to make a living. You're just fighting whoever goes on the card, and you fighting to win those matches to get the ultimate goal, which is to be a champion. That's the reason every NFL, NHL, MLB, NBA, college football, college sport team goes out there and plays. The goal of every team is to win the championship. So when you have these matches, like a random match out there, and people are complaining,
Even the Browns.
Okay. They're competing for the number one draft pick every year, which is a Super Bowl win for them. I mean, they go, and that's the thing that just fucking drives me so crazy about the wrestling fan today, being so spoiled. The internet has fucking ruined this business a lot too, just like MMA, just like it just being watered down from the WWE, etc. Which I just remembered what I wanted to say. I'm going to set this aside here and bring that right up next. But
Write it down.
I write it down.
And here's the thing. I feel if you're going to complain about just a regular match on TV between two people wrestling, just fucking stop. If we're going into a pay-per-view, we have a pay-per-view like every few months, like 3 or 4 a year, then absolutely, have a feud and angle behind it. The UFC, you see random guys fighting. Look, is it a lot better with hate and when there's like bad blood between the two? Absolutely, man. John Jones and Daniel Cormier. You want to see Conor McGregor and Ronda Rousey get their ass kicked a lot of the times. That kind of thing, man. It sells a fucking fight when it's there. But if it's not, it's okay. But yeah, I mean, if that makes sense. And I feel like one thing, especially now that they have a bigger roster, one thing the Impact should do to appease to these fans that, have to fucking find a problem or to nitpick everything is bring back that ranking system. Yeah, top 10. And so if you have people in the top 10, 15, whatever, wrestling one another, that shuts that shit the fuck up. Am I right?
You are right. And without the competitive matches, well, actually with these type of matches, you get to see guys in action that you normally wouldn't put together. You get to test things out. You get to see what may develop. You can create new feuds. You open up more windows of possibility than what your imagination already gives you.
Well, you do, but bear in mind that those competitive matches can still take two guys that are involved in a story with somebody else and merge the two stories together and give a backdrop for a future story. True. So, you could be involved in an angle with somebody else. I could be involved in an angle with somebody else. We could work all four of us into the same segment and kill two birds with one stone. The next thing you know, you and I, now we have a reason to not like each other. And that just helps to, that's just called foreshadowing. Now, you want to talk about things that they need to do in addition to that. How about mic the crowd? Watch a Ring of Honor show sometime, folks. Their crowd looks just as bored as the Impact crowd. I ain't making this shit up because I've been paying attention. But when they do make noise, the crowd is mic'd, so it sounds a lot better. Kudos to them for doing the obvious. Impact needs to do the same thing. Now, when they do that, I have a sliver of hope, just a sliver, that potentially we might get a little bit more energy out of, say, the announce team.
Yeah.
Otherwise, just bring Don West back. Or bring him back anyway, because the guy had energy. Everything sounded important. Mic the crowd to hype up not just the crowd, because it will hype the crowd up, but the wrestlers, they deserve it, right? Get the announcers going. And oh, by the way, people watching the show at home, good show because people are making noise. Color me stupid. I know. Here I go again. But the little things, folks, are a big deal. Microphones are cheap. Impact. Invest.
Please.
I feel like, when I say this, I mean the feuds and the storylines on the wrestling show should actually revolve around the wrestling and be built off of wrestling, in my opinion. Like when Booker T and Edge wrestle each other over fucking hair, a shampoo commercial and shit. I mean, it was so stupid. It was a great match, but they're fucking fighting over shampoo. This wasn't a women's wrestling match. It was, Booker T against Edge. And I feel like that's something that folks overlook, and I feel that that's something that needs to be done. Let the wrestling go out there and speak for itself. I don't know if you guys are in agreement with that, but I feel like it's a wrestling show. That's what it should fucking evolve around. I mean, even with MMA and stuff, like it's more of when the anger and the heat is just because who's better, like who is the best in the world. I mean, that's what's wrong with that as a feud. What's wrong with hatred or like upset over just straight competitive. You know what I mean?
That makes the show feel more legitimate. When you're wrestling over something stupid, it makes it feel stupid. It makes everything just feel stupid. It doesn't make you want to keep tuning in. It's silly. It's nonsense. You can't invest in nonsense, but you can invest in something that feels real, that feels legitimate, that feels competitive.
Don't you feel like if you're a talent that you're there to prove you're the best in the world anyway? So, I mean, I kind of feel like in a lot of ways that should be a backdrop for everything. And I guess maybe that's why at times I seemingly devalue it, just because I think you need to be competitive. You always need to say that you are the best. I mean, that's what every world championship feud should be about, being the best. Don't get me wrong. It's nice to have that hatred too. And for sure, I like that type of thing, but you can't be fighting over hairspray or shampoo or whatever the hell it was. But if you're talking about, having a feud over, Grado's immigration status, right? That's a reason to get people to tune back in. And so people will listen to that. But they also kind of made that sort of a side thing and didn't overdo it either. You know what I'm saying? Which is also important in balance. So I agree with you guys completely on the competitive aspect. The part that makes for a terrible show is when it's all about competition. And dare I say it out loud, Raven Effect, you may just want to mute me for a second, but world title series. So it's got to be that more than just that. But I think that needs to be the backdrop to everything, because I know if I'm a talent, I'm out there to show the world that I'm the best and move up the card. And how are people ever supposed to move up the card and compete when your mid-card title is a round system and there's never a match that isn't for the title? Somebody said there was one. I forget who. Somebody's corrected me in the past and said there was that one match. Whatever.
That's fine.
But they're all championship matches. So how do you build people up when you whatever?
I think the perfect. Oh, go ahead. No, what you were saying. Go ahead.
Yeah, you make a good point with humor. Is people are we can naturally be funny even in stressful situations. Like look at 2008, 2009, that time frame with TNA. Like you had Kevin Nash just making smart aleck comments all the time, and it was hilarious. But it didn't. It wasn't over the top. It wasn't too much. It wasn't a cartoony story that that just kind of turned me off towards things. It was more realistic to me because it's more human nature.
And Scott Hall was a comedy character. I mean, he was.
It's funny.
Absolutely could be. As far as like the competition storyline, I mean, no, the world title series is terrible. For me, in my honest opinion, the biggest match ever, possibly in a way, the greatest, the thing that will, in my opinion, can never be duplicated, which as far as like the two guys involved with it, it'll never be duplicated. But as far as like the build to it, for some reason, just the way the wrestling is, I don't think it'll ever be matched or even came close to again. But the biggest fucking feud or huge match of all time had to do with just who is better. The competition is Hulk Hogan versus the Ultimate Warrior at WrestleMania 6. There was no like storyline or anything. It was just the two fucking mega powers. Who is this new up and comer that's like crazy, not only crazy but like crazy physique, dominating everyone. Is he actually better than Hulk Hogan? Two faces. It just went into it. There it was. And we're not going to analyze that match like in the history of it and all the fallout from it. But
yeah, they fucked it up.
Maybe. I still love Warrior to death. But I mean, that it's never going to get any better than that, and it's never going to be duplicated. And I think it sucks. I think if you were to build the EC3, it would never lost, and you have some guy come around and you take like 1-2 years, and then EC3 hardly ever loses. It's a big deal kind of a thing, and then boom, you set that up for Bound for Glory. It's massive. The roof fucking blows off, but it doesn't happen. And that's as far as competition and stuff for me, that just seals it up. The other thing, we were on the topic of finishers and all that. What I wanted to say is, before I quit watching the WWE, every time I would watch their matches, every single match would end with someone either they'd kick out of their finishers or they'd go for their finisher and miss. And then how every single match would end is both guys would go for their finisher and miss. Then they'd fucking chain wrestle back and forth a little bit and then, finishing move out of nowhere. Every single match had that format. And it was like, how is the fan base so stupid to fucking watch this and see this and not like, how do you not open your eyes? But their fan base are fucking idiots. And I feel like for Impact, it's okay to do that in a couple matches a night. That's totally fine, but have some variety when you do it. I remember when, a match had happened and then all of a sudden fucking Scott Hall would get up and throw his arms around, the Razors or Outsider Edge was coming. He'd hit the edge and it was done. I mean, bring some of that back.
Look back to the days of Duke the Dumpster Drosy and Mantar. It was becoming a children's product, and that's basically what you're describing now is the WWE is now gearing towards kids again. Yeah. And they're just their fans are dumb in the sense that they don't know any better because they're kids.
Yeah, but kids still. Parents take their kids to events. Yeah. Parents buy merch for their kids.
Which is why they're selling to kids.
Exactly. So they're not exactly stupid. And what it does go to show you is that whether we want to admit it or not, that actually is what sells. So write that down. I mean, it's true.
The funny thing is, though, I guess we're getting off topic, but the funny thing is that they've pushed off half of their viewers in the last few years trying to sell to kids.
Yeah, but look what we've done.
I know. They're just trying to build the fan base back up. Build it back up younger and younger. It's a cycle that they've continually gone through.
All right. So, I mean, look, we get the WWE Light comments all the time and whatnot. I don't feel it. And I challenge anyone that says WWE Light to just be like, really describe WWE Light to me, please. Because like I've said before, if TNA, Impact, or whatever, that's WWE Light, not acceptable. Someone please tell me what the fuck WCW was then.
When I think of WWE Light, I think of boring. So,
right. Yeah. That makes sense.
I honestly think who the hell cares?
Yeah, there you go.
I think that, in old school heel, if you're going to start a company and you're going to create a product, what's the first thing you're going to do?
Well, it depends.
You're going to figure out who you're selling to.
No, yeah.
Right? So you figure out what to buy. So the first thing, if you're going to try to become a legitimate alternative to WWE, is you're going to figure out who am I selling to. Yeah. Ring of Honor knows who they're selling to. ECW, Impact doesn't.
Yeah,
Impact doesn't. And so you need to figure out who you're selling to first, then you devise your product around it. I mean, it's kind of common sense.
That was something I wanted to bring up earlier is we look back to when they brought Hogan in. The ratings were great at the time. They were going strong. They were rising for years. And they kept focusing on the people who weren't watching, trying to bring them in. And they've been doing this for years, and they keep pushing out the ones who were watching because they're trying to focus their product away from the ones who actually want their product.
Yep. Yep.
No, I mean, we've lost so much of our audience because they changed the alternative. They changed what they were doing. They went a total different route. They went with what Bischoff and Hogan wanted. I mean, those two, they had the craziest fan base in wrestling, and those two removed those fucking fans.
Well,
Like the Hardy Party. I mean, they literally got rid of those fans who got pissed off that they saw Val Venus pin Christopher Daniels. They got pissed. I mean, I disagree because I was not big on Ken Anderson when he first came in, and I feel like he blew expectations away his first 3 years there. But I mean, they were anti him. They didn't like the four-sided ring going away. I fucking hated watching Val Venus, beat Christopher Daniels, then leave the company like a month afterwards. I mean, things like that. But yeah, it's just they got to get that fan base is so fucking far gone. It's just it does seem impossible to ever even get half of it back, to be honest with you.
No, to be fair, I think that the Hogan and Bischoff take a little bit too much crap for this. They were brought in to expand the fan base. And honestly, and don't get me wrong, I understand that the trends were up, but their episodes were, I think, the highest rated ones that they had. The problem was that they ran out of money because they went live and they went on the road. Yeah. And when you try to do those two things and you run out of money, now you can't afford those people. And that's when things really started to take their turn, was because of the financial mess. And I personally have always blamed Spike for that, because I feel like Spike was, pulling the strings at the time. They're the ones that said you're bringing in Bischoff. They're the ones who said you're bringing in Hogan. And they supplemented the company to pay for those guys. And I think Spike wanted them live because of what it could possibly do, to the actual ratings, right? And what they could get for ad revenue, especially with DVRing on its way up back at the time, right? So I've always kind of felt that probably belonged more on Spike, and that when they lost the budget and they hit the financial, pitfalls, and Spike started to say, hey, we're not going to pay for this stuff anymore, that's when people really started to leave. And it's been a free fall for the company that way ever since. And that's why I'm so excited about Anthem and the Global Wrestling Network, maybe giving them an opportunity to actually grow their revenue a little bit.
I feel like, as far as, becoming this alternative product again, which I feel is, probably a necessity. I mean, I've got some stuff that, a few things here to chime in that I feel like if they do that, we got something going there. I think, like, for one, I mentioned bring the ranking system back. There's a big enough roster to do that now. They can even do that with the knockouts. Need more tag teams, but I think we can go there. We've seen as we've been pushing for since the show started, hashtag revive the X Division. The X Division's coming back, and I feel like that's a bread and butter. I mean, I hear a lot of people say, it's all about strong style now. The X Division isn't what it doesn't sell like it was back then when it was hot. Here's the thing, we're probably not going to get those old viewers back, so we have two options. We cater to the ones we have, and hopefully some come back, or we go look for new ones, which are casual fans, which is what Impact should kind of be targeting in a way as well, to kind of grow. So I feel like any casual fans has no fucking idea what strong style is, and if they knew about it, they'd be like, who gives a shit about Japanese wrestling anyways? I feel like they should go more adult and, kind of edgy. I mentioned the Brian Pillman. I've always felt they should just channel ECW and just us against the world. Let's be different and go to there. I think bring back the tag team division where it was. Remind people that the knockouts is where women's Revolution Wrestling started. Be more, add more depth on the roster. Find that perfect balance like we've talked about. And I feel they need to push their stars, make the championships feel prestigious, do some stability. And I'd like to see managers and jobbers come back and build to that big fight feel. I also feel like if you take away some stupidity, it's going to seem a lot more credible to people that don't like fake wrestling. The referee distractions and shit like that. I mean, come on now. It's so stupid. And have some heels that don't cheat. Just have a few that are so fucking good, like Eli Drake, Lashley, EC3. They don't need to cheat to win. I mean, I hate John Jones because he's so damn good, and he's a complete piece of shit. You know what I mean? Things like that. That's going to get your heels over even better when they're just that fucking good. So, anything you guys feel should be added as far as making this an alternative? Anything you feel or disagree with there?
I really like most of everything you just said. To add to, I'm kind of torn with this in my mind. They need excitement. Like everything you said is great, but they need a hook every week. They need something that's going to make you want to keep turning back. You look back towards like you keep mentioning Pillman, and you think about what his biggest moments were in the WWF, and you think about him and Steve Austin in Pillman's house with the gun. That was insane, but people tuned in. They wanted to see what was going to happen, and then they tuned in again to see, the following week. You get captivated by this. I really don't care for all this over-the-top stuff. I don't like it that often. But if you're going to look for new people, new viewers, I think you're going to have to do something a little more outlandish to get them in.
I think you have to define your market, and then I think you have to stay with it. And every time that they switch regimes, they redefine what their market is, and they've done it again this time. The bottom line is every successful company has a mission statement, and this is who they are and defines who they are and what they are. Ring of Honor has one, New Japan has one, WWE has one. Impact does not. It starts right there.
Yeah, that's
okay?
a good point.
And then stay true to yourself and true to that course. And everything that you do as a company revolves around that. And then to be honest with you, those things that you mentioned, Raven Effect, they don't actually really matter because it's defined what they're going to be. So whatever you pick out of that goes into this is who you are.
That just comes back to consistency.
That's how you get your consistency.
Yeah.
That's the solution to consistency. It's actually very simple.
Say what you're going to do, then do it.
That's tough, right? That's what your mama taught you.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, give a reason to tune back in, and then when people do tune back in, give another reason. That's why, like, the Destination X show, when that show was over with, I was like, who in the hell would not want to tune in next week? And then you had that Battle Royal, but they fucking gave that, like, everyone fucking knew Eli Drake was going to win. And then, it went to shit show from there, and it sucked. And it wasn't the champ's fault by any means, but it's just they shoot themselves in the foot so damn bad. We've talked about stability on the roster and all that. And I mean, you've talked about, who should we sign today? Who should we sign that? I mean, let's be honest, they're kind of fucking bleeding money. You know what I mean? It's pretty ridiculous to think that Impact can afford and sign whoever they want. And look, I think if there's ever going to be anyone they can sign that's going to make some massive effect, it's literally John Cena and John Cena only. And I think there's about a 0% chance of that happening. However, if they could, I feel if they ever were able to sign John Cena and let that guy just go heel the way he wants to and just stick it to every fucking douchebag that boos him because their girlfriend wants to fuck him, it would be fucking gold. But I mean, look, that's impossible. But look, I'm just gonna say some things. I know people are talking about Ricochet, this, and all these guys that they don't have. It's just some realistic names I think like they could bring in that haven't like fully ever been in the company before. They could help. Like Brian Cage is a name. Jack Evans, we've seen. Veda Scott is not only a wrestler but more of a manager. I think should be huge. We've seen Shinron. Jigsaw was there. I mean, creating tag teams. Black Cheese is Braxton Sutter's tag team partner. If they're going to keep that guy on the roster, at least make a tag team with him. And then like people that have been there before. I feel Austin Aries should be priority number one. But I mean, Don West even put some excitement there. Scott Steiner. The Pope is a wrestler. Davey Richards. I mean, Bram. Crazy Steve, Rockstar Spud. I'd love to see those guys.
Don't take away all our chances to name some guys.
I'm just saying. I
think he's named every independent wrestler on the planet already.
I know. It's like, who are we going to suggest? You're about to ask us.
It's only like 12, but I mean, like, was there anyone I didn't mention or that you could think of, or I mean, anyone that you wouldn't like to see that I mentioned there?
The guy I'd like to see is Jimmy Havoc. I think he's cool. He's got a great character. He's convincing, and that's what I want in the character. I want him to be convincing, and he's not the best in the ring, but he's entertaining. He's got a brawler style, but he's going to bring it every time, and it's going to be enjoyable to watch, and that's going to translate well to fans and potentially people who tune in. Yeah, he's somebody I think you could watch and then get kind of hooked on. Somebody who's going to grab you.
So. Here's my thoughts on it, and it's real simple. How about we develop the people that we've got first, and how about we do this?
We've been saying that all night.
I know. It's a shock that I'm saying it again here, right? But how about trying this one on for size? And I know. This has never been done before. We're not stealing a page out of WWE's playbook here at all, folks. But how about after, say, Bound for Glory, when you have that roster reset, you actually plot out. I'm talking about an outline, not every single line that's going to be read, but the entire year. And you figure out who's going to be feuding with who, what, when, and where. Okay? And you figure out this person's at the top of the card here, this person's at the top of the card here. That's kind of how you move Moose up the card, right? And you do it at the beginning. And everybody has purpose. And if they don't have a purpose for them on the roster, that's who you get rid of. And you make sure that you're using everybody throughout the year. It really isn't that difficult. You just have to have a plan. So when Old School Hill, you mentioned Jimmy Havoc. Jimmy Havoc would be a perfect member of Decay. They already teased it anyway a while back, right, when he was with them. Just imagine if they reformed Decay and they put it with, Crazy Steve and Rosemary and Abyss, but they brought Jimmy Havoc in as well, right? And then they could have one heck of a feud with OVE because they're a little bit out there too, right? And OVE could get a female. Now you got the females going out, so now you got somebody for Rosemary to work with. But plot out the whole year and give us more than 2 tag teams to do it with, because you can't plot a year with just 2 tag teams. Impact, you listening? You can't do that. But define your roster, take the people that you've got, give us a reason to invest in those people, and then chart the course and stay with the course.
And for the love of God, have a contingency plan for your stories.
Right. That's not so hard either. It's like you can adjust along the way when somebody gets injured. It does happen, but gosh darn it, we had a plan to get going with.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more there, either of you. I mean, it's pretty much common sense, but who knows? It's frustrating to think of how the company runs sometimes. Just how do you not fucking figure these things out when us common fans? I feel like it's common sense so often, but it goes right over their heads. I mean, that kind of contributes to, like, how do we fucking make them successful again, like business wise, which, kind of our on and off screen, gain more viewers, get the business to grow again. I mean, it's kind of like the last topic here to really go into. I mean, the Old School Heel. How do they become successful again on and off the screen as far as business growing and making profit, keeping people around? Before I do that, one last thing. I'm sorry for saying this. The other thing I wanted to say, man, is if you remember back in the days when you had Bobby Heenan, Jimmy Hart, Mr. Fuji, I mean, the managers would get people over so well. I feel like if you brought in Rockstar Spud, Beta Scott, James Mitchell, and Dan Lambert, I mean, Impact could really, really, really get some guys over.
Yeah, I feel like we've answered this question probably several times throughout the evening.
Do you?
Well, yeah, we've mentioned consistency. What they do, just continually do, create a plan, stick to it. That's what they do on the show. Just, we can add managers, which would be fantastic. Add new avenues to express certain ideas. And I think they're starting to really develop properly outside of the ring, off the TV, building their brand. Just, they're slowly doing things, creating revenue. So, I mean, they're on the right path. They just have to be consistent. It's kind of hard to add to it. I'm sure Dude will add to it, but
well, I mean, I just did an entire podcast on this one topic, right? So you got to figure I got a little bit to add here. My big thing is we talk about consistency, but stability. There's this thing called Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And basically it means that, if you don't have food and water and you don't have heat, you're not going to be able to love or have a good career, right? It's simple stuff. Raven Effect, you mentioned about how we can see these things and the folks in the office can't. Well, it's because they don't have that stability. And you need that stability in the office before you can be successful as an employee. And anybody that's ever had employees work for them before realizes that unless you love and nurture your employees and let them feel safe and that they're going to get things like a check, they can't be successful. And that's why they miss the stuff. They miss the stuff because of poor management, because management just can't get its head out of its ass because it's got its own problems. So you start by infusing the necessary funds, and it looks like Anthem's done that, and then just being very, very stable. That means that Ed Nordholm, despite the screw up with the GWF thing and the naming of the company, needs to stick around just to show the employees that we're going to have somebody here. We're going to do things right. And I think if you do that, and then you do the other things that we talked about, I think that you can then begin to get more successful. I think it all has to go around the Global Wrestling Network. And I said this on Impact Asylum Radio with Fire Guy. I think that they need to incorporate the network to build feuds with maybe some stars that they bring in from some of these other promotions, so we can actually know who Phantasma is before he actually shows up on the show. And I think if they can begin to use Impact, where they're not making money, as a hook and an advertisement, a 2-hour weekly advertisement to get people to sign up for the network. And I think that by bringing content that you're not going to see anywhere else, that's how they're going to start to build the brand and to make the company successful and stable from a financial standpoint.
I think it's funny that you mentioned Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We're basically at the bottom as fans. We're starving. We need them to feed us, and just we're begging them, give us more. We need this. But they're on a whole different level. They're looking at things from a completely different perspective than what we have been looking at. So it's kind of easy to see how they may miss some of the things that we're looking at, because their needs are different. They're looking at it from a whole different perspective. I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah, and honestly, if we brought somebody from creative in here and got them to do a shoot show with us, they would say, "Oh my gosh, there's this and there's this and there's this for everything," and a lot of that, I mean, it just comes back to that stability and providing them with what they need to do their job. But there are reasons that they're missing it, and it's not because they're dumb people and can't be successful. I just don't think that that's the case. I mean, when you work with as many places as I've worked, the average human being is the average human being. Put in the right scenario, pretty much anybody can be successful. It's just a matter of getting the right people in the right roles. And, and I don't think that they have that. I really don't.
Yeah, it's good.
As far as like on the screen stuff, I feel like they can do to improve. I mean, for one, establish the guy or the guys, like one or two, and really push that. Find a fucking company name, identity, and stick to that. Both find an identity for the product and a name, stick to it. Do not do another rebrand at all. Make these one-night onlys relevant. Like they matter for even the smallest of whatever. But I mean, also keep your X division strong. Like revitalize that, and then just make the tag teams good and relevant. Make the knockouts better and relevant. And then there's this grand championship. Here's my suggestion for this. Drop that fucking belt. And not the belt, but drop the stupid fucking rule. Get rid of that and never bring it back. What I'd like to see, if we have to do some kind of a judges thing, make it a 15-minute match, and then the judges decide. No interruptions, no rounds or whatnot. But I look at this. You remember the Intercontinental Championship back in the days was used for two things. It was either the Workers' Championship belt, or it was, if we have a guy that's not necessarily a worker, but we think he's going to be huge star, let's put this belt on him, get him over, get that belt over more, and see if he's going to catapult to the second. We used to have perfect Bret Hart, not necessarily the Honky Tonk Man, but the Intercontinental Championship used to be the workers' title belt. Not the Warrior. That was more like is this guy going to be the star kind of a thing. It was the workers' belt, and that's what I'd like to see. I mean, granted, in Impact right now, we're going to have a whole lot of Eddie Edwards holding that grand championship if that were the case, but I mean, do something like that. I mean, make this belt fucking matter and be prestigious, but they've got to get rid of that stupid rule because there's no logic as to who's going to challenge for it. It just happens, and they've got to make a change there. And then as far as like off the screen, we're talking the Global Wrestling Network. Absolutely, I feel like the NWA with Billy Corgan might be possible. There's going to be different stuff there. We'll probably see some old Impact guys there. I feel Lucha Underground could be a huge addition that's possible. They need a better network than Pop, and Lord knows if that'll ever happen, but they've got to do something. They need to keep these partnerships. They need to sign people to longer contracts. These one-year things have just wrecked them. A couple things. I mean, I just got in the mail the Essential Bobby Roode and Eric Young collection. I mean, there's make more of these DVDs. They can't be expensive, but this is stuff that you can't get on the Global Wrestling Network. I mean, there's profit. There's James Storm, there's Kurt Angle, Daniels, Eddie Edwards and the Wolves, Petey Williams on the roster. I mean, keep your talents happy and then make your fans happy because we like these collections. A lot of us do. And last, I mean, fucking for the love of God, advertise. Just advertise it. Just company heel number one. How hard is it to be to advertise? They've got to do that. People need to know about it. Know it's different. Know it's changed. Shit, fucking know it exists. I mean, that's kind of, the last thing that I have to sum up. I've kind of wrapped this up. I don't have much more else to say or suggestions for the night. I don't know if you guys have anything to chime in, but.
What are some things they're doing good? I mean, we've said the things that they need to do, but yeah, maybe we should focus a little bit on some of the things they have done well.
Right now, I think the show is good. I'm enjoying the rest. I have no knock against creative. Eli Drake, I think, is a star. I think they're pushing Impact and Del Rio well. Shit. It's hard because it's kind of critical. I mean, Lashley is strong. Moose is coming on as like the next superstar. The wrestling quality is improving a little bit. They've definitely brought back some guys I enjoy watching, or like making depth in the roster, I feel. But other than that, I don't know what else to say as far as good, even though I'm enjoying the product right now. If that makes sense.
The knockouts. I mean, you've got Rosemary, Taya, Sienna, which can claim to be the centerpiece of the division, right? Already. You've got Laurel Van Ness, which has just been killing it. And then there's Allie. Let's not forget Allie. Oh, and then there's that Gail Kim gal. So I think they've totally nailed that. I think they've done a good job with the heavyweight title scene. I think they've done a good job at getting not just a couple of guys involved, but more than a couple guys involved. I think they've finally done a great job at booking Lashley. I just did not like him as a dominator that was always won and was constantly a champ. It just got old and boring. But now they've given some life to him outside of him having the world championship. I think they're doing a good job at pushing Moose. I think they can do a little bit better and get over the top there. And I think they finally actually put a little bit of spotlight on the X division. I think they've gotten away from that. I think that they need to establish some heels in that division. But I think that you can legitimately see some of those guys as threats to people. I love what they did with Matt Sydal when they were pushing him. And I think that we're going to see the same thing with Desmond Xavier soon, hopefully. So they're definitely doing a lot of things right. And they've kept the wheels on the bus. They've given us a network, right, which is something that I think that we should all be thankful for if we're talking Thanksgiving. So, short of the Thanksgiving Day episode, which was just, they realized it wasn't quality television. I think that they've done a lot of good things, really, a lot.
I think the Noah thing with Eddie Edwards is good. I do. And I think this ATT thing, it brings credibility to them. It makes, them a little bit more reputable as far as fans that may not respect it at all. And then I think right now, I just watched some fights from 2 weeks ago. I'm behind on my DVR, and another fucking guy calls out Colby Covington. They've got an actual legitimate major heel that could be the UFC welterweight champion, or at least get that title shot coming up soon at some point, and capitalize on that. I saw Josh Matthews interview Colby Covington about a UFC fight. Cross promote. They've got some good things they're doing. They just need that push, that oomph to get over there, I guess, if that makes sense. But anything else we feel needs to discussed? Ed, I know I got to head out the door in just a second, but anything else you guys have to chime in?
I'm cool.
I'm done, man. This is a great conversation. I'm glad we did this.
Yeah, definitely.
I am too. It's kind of my brainchild here. I've been sitting on this one for weeks. We started off flat. I apologize for that. That's kind of on me, but it's what happens when you get myself, the heel, the dude. We get clicking. We're good pals. Look, I want to thank anyone who checked in and listened to this. Hopefully, do us a favor. Do everyone a favor. This isn't about us. This is about get this out to Ed Nordholm. Get this to Scott D'Amore. Get this to Sanjay. Let's try and get this show to Impact. Let's hear your thoughts too. You, our listeners. Let's hear some creativity. Let's get this fucking thing to Impact Wrestling so they can hear and know. But look, I'm on behalf of the HeelCast. Look, special episode. Love the fact that we did this. Great conversation. This is the RAV with Old School Heel with the Impact Dude signing out. Thank you. We'll see you next week. 2002 to 2009, I feel was by far the best stretch of the company. Are you guys both in agreement with me? I'm pretty sure Old School Heel is.
Yeah.
Dude,
you want me?
I'm just kind of asking the question. Was that your favorite period? Would you say the original Jarrett years by far, that was a better version of TNA Impact Wrestling?
He's got to think about this.
If he's talking, you can't hear him.
Oh, for crying out loud.
Are we gonna fix this in post?
Hey, the dude. You there? I don't know if we pause or I should go to the next segment.
Oh,
That's
Jesus
pause.
Christ.
There he is.
Something's going on. I went off mute and I went back on mute. So, all right, give me a second and this is going to have to be edited.
What episode?
All right, here we go. One.
If I could leave it in, it'd be good. He's not gonna love that part. We're all rusty to start with.
It's hilarious.
On top of being rusty as fuck, like